That's right. Yeah,
Like
perfect. Well, good morning. And Minister Nafik just reminded me that finally I'm behind a podium where you can see me in many ways. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us this morning. I'm delighted to have both here Minister of Municipal Affairs Bill Morrow and the Attorney General Yasser Nafik. And we're going to talk about the Ontario Municipal Board review. In my own community of Northumberland, Queenie West, and those across the province, land use planning affects almost every aspect of life. It helps communities decide whether and how to grow, where to build our homes, parks, schools, roads, and sewers. And while ensuring that our natural resources are protected, that we're planning ahead for the future. It's so important. After listening to Ontarians during province-wide consultation on the OMB last year, our government is ready to announce the direction we will be taking. Minister Morrow at this time will take the podium and he'll dive into some of the details. Minister?
Well, good morning, everybody. Very pleased to be here this morning. Lou, thank you for that. Pleased to be here with my colleague, Minister Naqvi, with my staff, and I want to just give a shout out to my staff, both in the ministry and my political office, for all of the help. And I know that Minister Naqvi feels very strongly about all the work that's gone into helping us to arrive at this point today. Today, our government is announcing significant changes to the land use appeal system in Ontario. And again, I'd like to thank MPP Rinaldi for his input and his leadership. As my parliamentary assistant, Lou attended many of the OMB town halls held across the province and heard firsthand from Ontarians how they would like to see the land use appeal system evolve. Construction is booming in many parts of our province. For example, in Toronto alone, 148 buildings are currently under construction and another 356 are planned. In Ottawa, 81 buildings are at the planning stage. The Ontario we build today will determine what kind of communities we will live in tomorrow and for years to come. And we need to get this right. I think we all want healthy, sustainable, and livable communities. Communities that accommodate people at all stages of life, that are affordable, and have a diverse range of housing options. We need to grow Ontario's communities in a way that attracts jobs and investments, and we need to create vibrant urban centres, while also preserving and protecting green spaces, farmland, and ecologically sensitive lands and waters. Since 2003, we have had many conversations about the land use planning system with Ontarians. And we've taken numerous steps to reform Ontario's land use planning system to achieve better results, to ensure that the communities we're creating and meeting the needs of Ontarians now and long into the future. The land use planning appeal system is a critical component of the larger land use planning system. We have made improvements to the system, but we recognize that we have not moved the marker far enough. That's why when I became Minister of Municipal Affairs, the Premier tasked me with leading a review of the scope and effectiveness of the Ontario Municipal Board. We were to engage municipalities, the public, and interested stakeholders in order to recommend reforms to improve the OMB's role within the broader land use planning system. Over the past 11 months, our two ministries have conducted this review. And today we're pleased to announce that later this month, we plan to introduce legislation that would, if passed, transform the land use appeal system, replacing the OMB with the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal. The reforms we are proposing would result in fundamental change. If our reforms pass, there would be fewer and shorter hearings and a more efficient decision-making process. There would be more deference to local land use planning decisions, and there would be a more level playing field for residents wanting to participate. The changes we are proposing follow an extensive consultation and were informed by what we heard. The voices of Ontarians from Thunder Bay to Windsor, from Ottawa, and all across the GTHA were heard. The review generated 1,100 written submissions, and more than 700 people participated in our town hall meetings organized around the province. There were a lot of different views, but there were also some recurring themes that we heard loud and clear from a wide array of stakeholders and the broader public. The need for more community involvement, a more meaningful voice for residents in the process, more local control over planning decisions, fewer hearings, and a more transparent process. We have been clear since the beginning of the process that we need an independent public body where people can challenge or defend land use decisions that affect their properties and communities. This tribunal has an important role to play in our land use planning process. People don't always agree on how their communities should develop or change. The local planning appeal tribunal would give them a place to voice their concerns on planning decisions that affect where they live and where they work. And it would provide a better alternative to resolving disputes through the courts. But it's important that this process is appropriate, open, and fair. The reforms we plan to introduce would, if passed, give communities a stronger voice in the land use planning process. There would be more weight given to local and provincial decisions. We propose to do this by ensuring some matters could only be appealed on the grounds that they don't conform or aren't consistent with provincial and municipal plans or policies. This transformed tribunal could only make decisions on matters that are part of the municipal council's decision, and could only overturn the municipal decision if it doesn't follow provincial and local plans or policies. We also propose to bring fewer municipal and provincial decisions before the tribunal. If passed, our changes would make the appeals process shorter and less costly by setting deadlines throughout the appeals process. Taken together, we believe these changes, if passed, could help bring development, including new housing, to market faster, creating communities that better reflect local concerns. And provincial and local policies that support the creation of complete communities with a range of housing types could also be put in place faster. All Ontarians should be able to count on a land use planning and appeal system that's efficient, transparent, and predictable, and one that gives residents a say in what is built in their neighbourhoods. The legislation that we will be introducing responds to those needs, which are at the core of building strong Ontario communities. I've been working on this with Attorney General Naqvi for some time. As an MPP and as Ontario's Attorney General, he has been very active in the conversation about improving our land use planning system. I'm very pleased to be working with him on this proposed legislation that will give residents tools to more effectively participate in land use planning appeals. I'm now pleased to welcome the Attorney General Yasir Naqvi to the podium.
Thanks, Bill. Well, thank you very much, Bill, and good morning, everyone. I must say I'm very excited to be here today for this very important announcement. I'm pleased to be here with Minister Mauro and MPP Lou Rinaldi as we move toward a transformed land use planning appeal process that is more predictable, faster, and more accessible. And if you will let me indulge for just a moment, I must say that this is a particularly momentous announcement for me personally. Not only because OMB reform is a major component of both our mandate letters from the Premier, but also because it was a promise that I made to my community back in Ottawa and have been working towards since 2010. So I echo Minister Mauro's sentiments. The land use planning appeal system isn't working for people and communities. The status quo is simply no longer an option. And it's on us to make the bold changes required to overhaul the system. Our cities have to keep growing to support the needs of current and future generations. But the neighborhoods that give rise to those cities must fit the needs of the families that live and work in them. They need to form a community. But healthy, thriving communities don't just happen by chance, especially in large urban centers. They must be nurtured. That takes careful planning, careful development. And we know that there are many different ideas on the best way to develop an area. There are strong opinions and many competing voices. When it comes to land use planning, we need to find a way to balance necessary growth with protecting our green spaces, farms, and parkland, while building livable communities that are healthy, safe, and sustainable. At the end of the day, a successful land use planning system protects the best interest of all members of the community. A moment ago, Bill just told you all about how we are overhauling the Ontario Municipal Board and creating a new appeals tribunal. As Attorney General, it's up to my ministry to make that new system accessible to everyone, local community groups, developers, and municipalities. As I said before, we know people care deeply about the communities they call home. And many of these people have very clear ideas about how their communities should grow. Rightly, they want to be sure that their views are taken into account when major decisions are made. That is why, along with the creation of the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, we are planning to create an independent support center to level the playing field. We want to make sure that voices of Ontarians are heard about the decisions that impact them. This support center would provide free legal and planning advice and representation to Ontarians throughout the appeal process. Land use planning directly impacts Ontario families, so it is critical that they feel empowered and supported in the decision-making process. That requires access to information. So once an appeal process is complete, tribunal decisions would be posted for all to see, and that includes new plain language summaries of decisions on a revamped, user-friendly website. Taken together, these changes will make it a lot easier for residents to better understand how their communities are growing. During our consultations, people told us that often the appeal hearing process is too long and too complicated, and I agree with them. Our legislation would establish clear timelines for pre-hearing and hearing processes so that people can get a better sense of when the tribunal would hear their case and how long the whole process is going to take. The proposed legislation will result in faster and fairer hearings, but at its heart, this is about a culture shift to a less adversarial system. Our proposal will get rid of examination and cross-examination at most major hearings. It will also include mandatory case management meetings with all parties to discuss opportunities for settlement, including mediation. We heard throughout the consultation that there needs to be more mediation in the appeals process so that people can avoid going to the tribunal altogether. We absolutely agree. This change would allow for alternative solutions to land use planning issues, solutions that the parties reach together. I'm sure that many of you will recognize this famous quote from Jane Jacobs. She said, "Cities have the capability of providing something for everybody, only because and only when they are created by everybody." I couldn't agree more. Both Minister Mauro, Lou Rinaldi, and I are committed to ensuring that the changes we are proposing to Ontario's land use planning system put people and communities first. It is our hope that these changes will make residents feel like they have a real voice when it comes to land use planning decisions, and that they will feel empowered to act when a decision is made that they don't think is right. We believe that our proposed changes will create a balanced decision-making process that is more flexible, faster, and more affordable, and can help ensure that cities and towns reflect the best interests of the people living in them today, as well as future generations. And with that, I'd like to hand the podium back to Lou, and I think all of three of us are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Sure. All right, so I'm supposed to monitor the questions, right, Mark? No? Perfect.
Can you elaborate on the changes to plans around transit hubs?
Sure. So we will, if the legislation passed for major transit station areas, the municipalities, and we should acknowledge Councillor Matlow is here from the City of Toronto, they will have a discretionary tool available to them when they invoke local policies and decisions around major transit station areas. The municipality will be able to not allow appeals to go forward. This is consistent, I would say, with the intent of the legislation to allow more local deference for decisions that are made at the local level. And so they will have that ability. Understanding, of course, that the decisions that are made at council are still going to have to conform and be consistent with provincial plans and provincial policies. And so we just think it's consistent with the breadth and exactly what we're trying to do overall when it comes to the legislation generally.
How far around which kind of major transit?
I think it's a 500-meter radius around the MTSAs.
Can you
comment that cities had concerns about neighborhood-specific plans, secondary plans being almost immediately appealable. There's often years of work and public consultation that go into that kind of thing. Any change to...
Sure. So there are several items in the legislation that will be sheltered from appeal. It's part of the reason and the way forward that we believe, if passed, decisions will be made sooner and more reflective of local decisions. So in the specific example around secondary plans, they will be sheltered from appeal for 2 years unless the municipality decides that they would want an appeal again to go forward. So they would be completely sheltered for 2 years.
And then I want to say, and then we're making another very important fundamental change, which is around if disputes do arise, those matters will go to the new tribunal, but the task there will be for the tribunal to look at whether the decision that's made by the municipal council conform or complies with the official plan and the secondary plan. And if the answer is no, as happens today, right now, where OMB replaces with their own decision, the new appeal tribunal will not be able to do so. It will send the matter back to the municipal council, and then they will have to reconsider their own decision.
Can I ask a bit about the politics of this? I mean, the Liberal government has been in power for 14 years now. Why has it taken so long to fix something that has been talked about as being broken for so long?
Do you want to, I can answer it.
Well, both. Go ahead, and
Okay.
I have something I'll add as well.
Well, so we've been working on these changes for some time. I think we brought some significant changes in 2006. We gave time for them to take place. Then we brought changes again just a few years ago through Bill 73 in the Planning Act that gave stronger voices and more predictability to how local plans are made. And now we're taking this very important transformational change. I strongly personally believe that the time is right now to make these changes. We have seen a significant evolution in how planning land use planning is done in our province. Our planning making process at the provincial level is far more sophisticated today with sufficient consultation than ever before. We're seeing the same thing taking place at the municipal level. It only makes sense that we really look at the OMB system, transform it the way we're doing it now, to truly make it a dispute settlement a process where the guiding principles, the guiding documents remain the one at the provincial level and at the municipal level, and not have a body like the OMB that can create policy at the same time as our provincial and local governments. So I think with the evolution that we have seen, this is the right time to make sure that we truly have a dispute settlement mechanism by way of local planning appeal tribunal that respects that evolution and gives stronger voice to all parties involved, municipalities, developers, and local communities.
One of the changes that we have made in the past that has borne some fruit, I would suggest, though, is the local appeal bodies. So they were enabled in 2007, 2006. Only one municipality to this point has made the decision to implement, construct, and begin hearing what they're allowed to hear at the local appeal body level so far, and that's the City of Toronto. And so I think within the last week or two, very recently, the City of Toronto's local appeal body is now active, running, operating. About 70% of matters that ended up before the Ontario Municipal Board at the City of Toronto level were matters that could have been heard for the past 10 years by a local appeal body. That's active now. So right off the bat, so that was a reform that we brought in previously. So there was work that was done before, and there was work that has yielded results. We would all agree maybe it's taken a bit longer than we thought it would at the time. It's the only one. There are other municipalities have yet to create their own local appeal bodies. We've also expanded the scope of what the local appeal bodies can hear. Generally, it's been site plan, consents and variances, but now we're including site plans as well. And so that will take another piece out that could have been appealed to the OMB. So this goes back to more local deference. This goes back to expediting the process and control for the local municipalities. So it's a good piece, and it speaks to work that was done previously.
I'm expecting developers are going to not be terribly thrilled with this. What's your response to to developers that say this is yet another example of the Liberal government doing some things that will tie developers' hands and make this more difficult?
Well, I think they perhaps, it's fair to say, might have preferred status quo. We don't agree. We don't think that's the way to go. We're making a change. We are, please remember, though, maintaining the local planning appeal tribunal. So there is a place to appeal to. What is changing dramatically is what they can do. There will not be, as their so-called de novo hearings anymore. The local planning appeal tribunal will only be ruling on consistency and conformity. So you can still bring an application to a local council, you can still put it in, you can still have a disagreement, you can still appeal it to the local planning appeal tribunal. It's just that they will now only be ruling on consistency and conformity with local plans and with provincial plans and policies.
If I may.
In terms of people to understand, and actually this is probably a good question for the Attorney General, is from a legal standpoint, does this kind of tip the balance back away from being in favor?
Yeah, and let me answer both questions together. We've done a lot of consultation, and I know Bill feels the same. Strongly believe that this is really a balanced package. We're transforming the way we do dispute settlement within the land use planning system. But we're balancing all the interests, and the way we're doing it is by creating more predictability around our planning decisions, both our planning documents and planning decisions. And for developers, that is good news because they have to now spend less time disputing these matters at lengthy hearings that takes a long time at the OMB, as opposed to doing what they do best, is build homes and build neighborhoods. So by making sure that we're creating opportunities for better decision making at the municipal level, we're creating more predictability in the system. The other thing we're doing is making our dispute settlement system truly a dispute settlement process that is streamlined, is more accessible, and is less adversarial. Again, ensuring that in those matters where we would need some sort of dispute resolution, you've got a process that is far more responsive than what we have in place right now.
By replacing and repealing and replacing the OMB, are you keeping the same personnel and bureaucratic structure in place?
So we're going to be looking at some significant changes in terms of course, the rules by which the new local planning appeal tribunal will operate. The members will continue, but of course we are going to be appointing new members as well. This is really a very significant culture shift that we are bringing forward within the institution by changing the scope and its mandate, and also changing its process by which they will be dealing stuff. We are no longer, as I suggested earlier, we'll be looking at lengthy hearings with witnesses and cross-examinations. What we're looking at is more a paper-based system where what one is looking at is conformity to municipal decision making on very narrow areas of issues. But most importantly, the change we're making, which is I think is a very fundamental change that makes the system less adversarial, is mandatory case management meetings, including the option for mediation, so that all parties can be brought together right at the onset of any matter and see if we can get to a win-win solutions as opposed to the very adversarial system that we have in place right now. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks very much.